My boss said Daniel's name twice before I understood what was happening. The first time I thought it was context. The second time I understood. We were in the quarterly review meeting, 12 people. The full project team plus 2 directors, and someone from the executive suite I had never seen before. The kind of meeting that has a specific weight before it starts, the weight of something being announced rather than discussed. My boss, a man named Craig, stood at the front of the room with the expression of someone delivering good news he had been holding for a while. Craig said, "I want to take a moment to recognize the leadership that made Project Clearwater what it became. This team delivered something we are genuinely proud of, and I want to specifically acknowledge the person whose vision and drive carried this across the finish line." I sat up slightly. 2 years. My project. My concept, my structure, my late nights, my client relationships, my recovery plan when month 14 had almost collapsed everything. I had carried it across the finish line. Craig said, "Daniel Mercer. The promotion to senior project director goes to Daniel." 12 people in that room. Several of them looked at me immediately. The specific look of people who know something is wrong and are waiting to see how the person it is most wrong for responds. Daniel was sitting 3 seats to my left. He looked at the table. He had joined the project in month 21, 3 months before we closed. He had done his work. I am not going to say otherwise. He had handled 2 client presentations and a vendor negotiation, and he had done those things competently. He had also arrived 21 months after I had started building something from a concept and a deadline and no clear path between them. I looked at Craig. He was smiling. The smile of someone who has made a decision they believe is defensible and who has not yet considered that defensible and correct are different things. I smiled back. Then I picked up my notebook and my pen, and I walked back to my desk, and I opened the folder I had been building for 2 years. My name is Emma Rhodes. I am 34 years old. I have worked in technology project management for 11 years. I am good at it in the specific way that shows up in the outcomes rather than the visibility, the projects that deliver on time, the clients who renew, the teams that function because someone has built the structure that allows them to function. I joined Meridian Tech 3 years ago as a project manager. Craig Dalton had been my direct supervisor since day one. He was competent at the parts of the job that required presence. He was less attentive to the parts that required understanding what was actually happening on the ground. Project Clearwater had been assigned to me in March of my 2nd year. A product integration project for a major client, complex, high stakes, 18 months in the original timeline that became 24 when month 14 produced the crisis that almost ended it. I handled the crisis. I rebuilt the timeline. I managed the client through their frustration and their doubt, and the 3 conversations where the contract had genuinely been at risk. I did this while Craig attended the executive briefings and described the project's progress in language that was accurate at the level of outcomes and entirely silent about who was producing them. Daniel joined in month 21, 3 months before close. He was a competent project manager. He handled his scope. He did not build what I had built, and he did not carry what I had carried, and he had been in the room for 3 months of a 24-month project. Craig gave him the promotion I had been told. Twice, in direct conversations, in this office, was mine. I had those conversations documented. I want to explain why the folder existed before I explain what was in it. I am not someone who documents out of suspicion. I document out of professional habit. The same habit that produces good project management produces good personal record keeping. Every significant decision, every deliverable, every client communication, every internal milestone. I had been doing this for 11 years. It was not surveillance. It was how I worked. The folder for Project Clearwater had been building since month 1. Not a single organized archive, the natural accumulation of someone who works carefully and keeps what they produce. By month 24, it contained the following: 211 project emails, initiating, directing, resolving, deciding. My name in the from field or the primary recipient field on 94% of them. The 14 that included Daniel were from months 21 through 24. 47 formal project documents, proposals, timelines, recovery plans, client presentations, vendor agreements, status reports. My name on every one as author or primary contributor. 12 of them predated Daniel's arrival by more than a year. 2 recorded conversations with Craig, recorded on my phone during in-person meetings where he had explicitly told me the senior project director promotion was being considered for me. Both recorded in states where single-party consent applied, both clear in their content. And 1 email from Craig to the executive suite forwarded to me accidentally in month 19, in which he described the project's recovery as having been driven by strong leadership from the team without naming anyone specifically. Not naming anyone specifically. I had kept that email. I opened the folder at my desk after the meeting. I created a single PDF, 47 documents, 211 emails, selected into a coherent chronological narrative of who had built what and when. Then I opened a new email to HR. If you have ever kept every document knowing that someday the record would matter, and then watched the day arrive, you already know why this story exists. Subscribe and hit the bell. New story every day. The email to HR was 4 paragraphs. I wrote, I am writing to formally document a concern regarding the promotion announced today in the Project Clearwater review meeting. The senior project director role was awarded to Daniel Mercer, who joined the project in month 21 of a 24-month project. I have managed Project Clearwater since its inception in March of last year. I am attaching documentation that establishes the full scope of my contributions to this project, including project initiation documents, all major deliverables, client communication records, and 2 recorded conversations with my direct supervisor in which my candidacy for this promotion was explicitly discussed. I wrote, I am not submitting this documentation to dispute Daniel's competence. I am submitting it to ensure that the documented record of who built this project and who led it through its most critical period is part of any formal review of the promotion decision. I wrote, I am available to discuss this at any time convenient to HR, and I am prepared to provide any additional documentation requested. 4 paragraphs. 1 attachment. 47 documents organized chronologically. I sent it at 2:14 in the afternoon. HR replied at 6:47 the same evening. The reply was from the HR director herself, not a coordinator, not an automated acknowledgement. The director. A woman named Patricia, who had been at Meridian for 9 years and who I had spoken to exactly once before at an onboarding event in my first month. Patricia said, Emma, thank you for this documentation. I have reviewed the attachment you sent. I would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow morning if you are available. Please let me know your earliest availability. I replied, I am available at 8. She confirmed 8. Patricia's office was on the executive floor. I had never been there. She had my PDF open on her laptop when I came in. She had clearly read it. She said, Sit down, Emma. I sat. She said, I want to ask you something directly before we go further. Did Craig ever formally document the promotion discussion with you? In writing? I said, No. Both conversations were verbal. I recorded them with his knowledge that our meetings were sometimes recorded for my own project notes. I had disclosed this practice in my first week and he had not objected. She said, I've listened to both recordings. She said that quietly, the way someone says something that carries weight. I said, What do you want to know? Patricia said, I want to understand the timeline. Walk me through the project from month 1. I walked her through it, not defensively, chronologically, month 1 through month 24. The concept, the build, the crisis, the recovery, the close. The specific decisions that had kept the client in the contract when the contract had been genuinely at risk. She listened without interrupting for 37 minutes. Then she said, Emma, why didn't you say something in the meeting yesterday? I looked at her. I said, Because I had 47 documents and I needed them to speak for me in the right room. A conference room with 12 people, including Craig, was not the right room. Patricia looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "That was the correct assessment." She closed the laptop. Patricia said, "I am going to need a week to conduct a full review. I want you to know that what you have submitted is being taken seriously and that the process will be thorough. I cannot tell you the outcome before it concludes. What I can tell you is that documentation of this quality and this scope is not something we can set aside." I said, "I understand." She said, "Is there anything else you want me to know?" I thought about Craig's smile at the front of the room, Daniel looking at the table, 12 people watching me to see how I would respond. I said, "I have given everything I have to this company for 3 years. I would like that to be visible in the record." Patricia said, "It is." If this moment stayed with you, leave me a comment. Have you ever sat through a meeting where something wrong was said publicly and waited until you were at your desk to respond? Tell me what you did. I read every single one. The review took 9 days. I went to work every one of those days. I sat at my desk. I managed my current projects. I spoke to Craig when project communication required it and kept every exchange professional and documented. Craig said nothing about my email to HR. Not directly. The specific silence of someone who knows something is in motion and has decided that acknowledging it is worse than ignoring it. Daniel said something on day 3. He found me in the kitchen and he said, "Emma, I need you to know I didn't know about the promotion before the meeting. Craig didn't tell me you were being considered." I looked at him. He was telling the truth. I could see it. I said, "I believe you, Daniel. This is not about you." He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Do your job well. That's all I need from you." He nodded. He left. On day 9, Patricia called me into her office again. She said, "Emma, we have completed the review. The promotion decision has been reversed. The senior project director role will be offered to you effective the 1st of next month. We are also initiating a formal review of Craig's performance management practices." I sat with that for a moment. Not triumph, something quieter. The specific feeling of a record being corrected rather than a wrong being righted. Because the wrong had happened and the correction did not erase it, it simply established what was actually true. I said, "Thank you, Patricia." She said, "Thank you for the documentation. I want to be direct with you. Without it, this would have been very difficult to resolve. The recordings in particular were determinative." I said, "I keep everything." She said, "I can see that." Craig was placed on a performance improvement plan 2 weeks later. He remains at the company. Our interactions are professional and minimal. The senior project director title went live on my profile on the 1st of the month. I updated my email signature. I updated my LinkedIn. 3 people from the Clearwater team sent me messages that day. All of them said variations of the same thing. "We knew it was yours." I knew it too. I just needed 47 documents to make sure everyone else did. I am 34 years old, and my boss gave my promotion to someone who had been on my project for 3 months, because the person who had been on it for 24 months had not made her contributions visible enough in the rooms that mattered. The first thing, document your work as if no one is watching and as if everyone will need to see it. Not because you expect to need the documentation, because you cannot know in advance when you will. The 47 documents in my folder were not assembled in anticipation of the promotion meeting. They were the natural accumulation of someone who works carefully. The fact that they became evidence of 2 years of contribution is a consequence of a professional habit that existed before I knew it would matter. Keep your emails, keep your drafts, keep the version history of documents you create. Keep records of verbal conversations that contain commitments. Not in a folder labeled evidence, in the ordinary, organized way that professional people keep their work. The organization is the protection. The second thing is about the meeting and the choice I made in it. I sat in that conference room for 40 minutes after Craig said Daniel's name, and I said nothing. 12 people watching me. The specific silence of someone who has just heard something wrong said publicly. I chose not to respond in the room because I understood that an emotional response in front of Craig's audience gave him control of the narrative. The email to HR gave me control of the narrative. The difference between those two options was 47 documents and the correct room. Not every situation permits the wait. Sometimes the wrong thing must be corrected in the moment. But when you have the documentation and the time, the correct room is almost always more powerful than the immediate response. Choose the room carefully. The third thing is about Daniel and what his story actually is. Daniel accepted a promotion that had been announced to him without context he needed to have. He did not know I had been told it was mine. He did not know I had built the project for 21 months before he arrived. He found out both of these things during the 9 days of the review, and he came to me in the kitchen on day 3 to say so. He is not the villain of this story. The villain, if we need one, is the person who managed the situation in a way that pitted two competent people against each other rather than recognizing both of them accurately. Craig had enough credit to go around. He chose not to. That choice cost him. It did not cost me. Hi everyone, thank you for being here. Tell me in the comments, have you ever kept documentation for years without knowing when you would need it, and then watched it do exactly what you had kept it for? And which moment stayed with you longer? Craig saying Daniel's name in the meeting, or Patricia saying the recordings were determinative? I read every single one. If this story reached you today, subscribe. New story every day. Emma Rhodes, Austin, Texas.